The spaceship drifted silently through the void, its sleek, angular design a testament to the advanced technology of the Zelthar Federation. Inside, young Kalark, a promising student of Zelthar culture and science, stood at the observation deck, gazing at the blue planet ahead, Earth. His heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension, knowing that this journey would be unlike any other. The Zelthar, a species known for their stoic nature and adherence to logic, had long viewed Earth and its inhabitants with a sense of distant curiosity, tinged with underlying wariness. Stories of Earth and its inhabitants had been circulating in the Zelthar academies for years, painting humans as a primitive, warlike species driven more by emotion than reason. The idea of such a species navigating the vastness of space and playing a role on the galactic stage was a source of both fascination and unease. Yet the Galactic Council, in its wisdom, had deemed it essential for young Zelthar students to witness humanity firsthand, to understand their potential as allies or threats. The thought of stepping foot on Earth, mingling with its inhabitants, filled Kalark with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he was eager to prove himself, to return to Zelthar Prime with valuable insights that could solidify his position among the scholars. On the other, he couldn't shake the unease that settled in his chest, the nagging fear that the humans he would meet would confirm the worst of his people's suspicions. What if they were as chaotic and unpredictable as the stories suggested? What if he found himself caught in the midst of their violent tendencies? As the ship approached Earth's orbit, Kalark's eyes scanned the vast expanse of blue and green below, a stark contrast to the cold, metallic interiors of the Zelthar vessels. The sight of sprawling cities and lush landscapes filled him with a mix of wonder and trepidation. The planet was teeming with life, a vibrant, chaotic energy that was almost palpable, even from space. It was a far cry from the orderly, serene environment of Zelthar Prime, where every aspect of life was meticulously controlled and regulated. How could such a tumultuous world produce a species capable of space travel, let alone one that could hold its own on the galactic stage? The descent was smooth, the ship's advanced stabilizers compensating for Earth's gravitational pull with ease. Kalark felt a slight pressure in his ears as the ship entered the atmosphere, a reminder of the differences between this world and his own. The clouds parted, revealing a vast expanse of land dotted with buildings, vehicles, and countless humans going about their lives. Kalark's heart rate quickened as the landing pad came into view, a sprawling complex on the outskirts of a massive human city. The structures were tall and imposing, yet there was an organic quality to them, a sense that they had grown out of the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. As the ship touched down with a soft thud, Kalark took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The doors hissed open, and a rush of warm, humid air filled the cabin, carrying with it the scent of Earth, an unfamiliar mix of flora, exhaust fumes, and something else he couldn't quite place. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, climate-controlled environment he was used to, and it took him a moment to adjust. The landing ramp extended, and Kalark stepped forward, his movements precise and deliberate, a reflection of his training. His robes, made of a material that shimmered in the light, billowed slightly as he moved, drawing the attention of the humans waiting below. Among them was Sarah, the human assigned as his guide and liaison during his visit. She was tall for a human, with auburn hair tied back in a practical bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that took in every detail. She smiled warmly as Kalark approached, extending a hand in greeting. "Welcome to Earth, Kalark," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that Kalark found both soothing and disconcerting. "We have a lot to show you." Kalark hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking her hand, the contact brief but firm. The warmth of her skin against his was surprising, a reminder that despite their outward differences, humans were, at their core, living beings like himself. "Thank you," he replied, his voice calm and measured, though he couldn't entirely mask the undercurrent of uncertainty that laced his words. "I look forward to learning more about your world." The human city, known as New Haven, was a bustling metropolis that seemed to pulsate with energy. Clark's eyes darted from one sight to the next as Sarah led him through the streets, his mind struggling to process the sheer volume of stimuli bombarding his senses. The buildings towered above him, their surfaces a mix of glass, steel, and materials Clark couldn't immediately identify. Vehicles of all shapes and sizes zipped by, their engines humming or roaring, depending on the model. The humans themselves were a diverse lot, their appearances varying wildly in terms of skin tone, clothing, and physical features. Clark had read about the diversity of humanity, but seeing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. Sarah, ever observant, noticed his wide-eyed expression and chuckled softly. "I know it's a lot to take in," she said, her tone gentle, "but you'll get used to it. New Haven is one of the busiest cities on the planet, and it can be overwhelming, even for us humans." Clark nodded, though his mind was still reeling. The bustling streets, filled with humans going about their daily lives, were overwhelming in their intensity. There was a sense of urgency in their movements, a constant rush that contrasted sharply with the measured, deliberate pace of life on Zelther Prime. The noise was another factor that took Clark by surprise. The hum of engines, the chatter of voices, the distant blare of sirens, it all blended into a cacophony that grated on his nerves. How could these humans function in such chaos? As they continued their tour, Clark's mind was bombarded with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, he couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity and resourcefulness of humanity. The technology on display was impressive, from the towering skyscrapers that seemed to touch the sky to the intricate web of transportation systems that connected every corner of the city. It was clear that humans were a species driven by innovation, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Yet at the same time, Clark couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at him. The stories he'd heard about humanity's violent past, about their wars and conflicts, played on a loop in his mind. How could such a species achieve greatness when they were so prone to self-destruction? The first real test of Clark's perceptions came when Sarah took him to a local market. The market was a riot of colors, smells, and sounds, with vendors hawking their wares from stalls that lined the narrow streets. The scent of freshly cooked food mingled with the aroma of spices and the tang of salt from a nearby ocean, creating a sensory overload that left Clark momentarily stunned. The vendors themselves were a lively bunch, shouting and gesticulating as they tried to attract customers, their voices blending into a cacophony that made Clark's head spin. Clark hesitated at the entrance, his instincts urging him to retreat. This was not the orderly, serene environment he was used to. This was chaos, pure and simple, and every fiber of his being screamed at him to leave. But Sarah, ever the perceptive guide, gently encouraged him to explore. "Try this," she said, handing him a piece of fruit from a nearby stall. The fruit was small and round, its skin a deep, vibrant red. Clark eyed it warily, but Sarah's encouraging smile gave him the push he needed. Tentatively, Clark took a bite, and his senses were immediately assaulted by a burst of flavor unlike anything he had ever experienced. The sweetness was intense, with a slight tartness that balanced it perfectly. The texture was firm yet juicy, and Clark found himself taking another bite before he even realized what he was doing. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The market, which had seemed so overwhelming just moments before, now felt a little more inviting. As they continued to explore, Sarah introduced Clark to various aspects of human culture: music, art, literature, each revealing a different facet of the human experience. Clark found himself both fascinated and perplexed by what he saw. The music, with its complex rhythms and melodies, was unlike anything he had encountered on Zelther Prime. The art, with its bold colors and abstract forms, challenged his perception of beauty and creativity. The literature, filled with tales of love, loss, triumph, and despair, offered a window into the human soul, exposing the depths of emotion that Clark had always been taught to suppress. Yet despite his growing appreciation for human culture, there were still moments when Clark's old biases resurfaced. One such moment occurred during a visit to a busy downtown street. As they walked, Clark noticed a heated argument unfolding between two humans. Their voices were raised in anger, their gestures aggressive and confrontational. Clark's heart raced with fear, his mind flashing back to the stories of human violence he had heard so many times before. This was it, he asked. But then, just as quickly as it had started, the argument dissipated. The two humans, their anger spent, simply walked away, their hostility fading as quickly as it had flared. Clark was left standing on the sidewalk, bewildered. Could humans truly control their darker impulses? Was it possible that they could overcome their violent tendencies even in the heat of the moment? The turning point in Clark's journey came during a visit to a historical site. Sarah took him to a memorial dedicated to the victims of a devastating war that had ravaged Earth many years ago. The memorial was a solemn place, filled with quiet reverence as visitors paid their respects to those who had perished. Clark felt a profound sense of sorrow as he walked among the rows of names etched into the stone walls. Each name represented a life lost, a family torn apart by the horrors of war. "This is what we try to avoid," Sarah said softly, her voice carrying a weight of emotion that Clark had rarely heard from her before. "But it's also a reminder of what we can overcome." Clark stood in silence, his mind racing. The Zelthar had always prided themselves on their ability to avoid conflict, on their commitment to peace and harmony. But here was a species that had faced unimaginable horrors and yet continued to strive for peace. How was that possible? How could a species so prone to violence also possess such a deep desire for harmony? As they left the memorial, Clark found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he still harbored doubts about humanity's potential for violence. The images of war and destruction were hard to shake, and the stories of human conflicts continued to haunt him. But on the other hand, he couldn't deny the strength and resilience they had shown in the face of adversity. The fact that they had endured, that they had rebuilt and continued to push forward, was a testament to their determination and willpower. That night, as Clark lay in his quarters, he made a decision. He would dedicate the remainder of his time on Earth to understanding the true nature of humanity, not just through observation, but through direct interaction. He would seek out opportunities to engage with humans on a deeper level, to learn from them and to challenge his own preconceptions. It was a daunting task, but Clark knew it was necessary if he was to return to with a true understanding of this complex and enigmatic species. The next day, Clark asked Sarah to take him to a place where he could see humans in action, where their truest nature would be revealed. Sarah agreed, though Clark could sense a hint of concern in her eyes. She took him to a training facility for emergency responders, a place where humans prepared for the worst-case scenarios. As they arrived, Clark was immediately struck by the intensity of the atmosphere. The facility was a hive of activity, with teams of humans running drills, practicing life-saving techniques, and preparing for any situation that might arise. Clark watched in awe as the humans trained with a level of dedication and focus that he hadn't expected. These were not the chaotic, undisciplined beings he had imagined. These were individuals who had committed themselves to a higher purpose, who were willing to put their lives on the line to save others. The drills were intense, simulating real-life emergencies with startling realism. Clark could see the sweat on the humans' brows, the determination in their eyes, the way they moved with precision and purpose. One particular drill caught Clark's attention. A team of firefighters was tasked with navigating a burning building to rescue a trapped victim. The flames roared, the heat palpable even from where Clark stood. The sight of the flames licking at the building filled him with dread. Yet, the firefighters moved with a calmness and focus that belied the danger they were in. They communicated with hand signals and shouted commands, their teamwork seamless as they maneuvered through the inferno. Clark's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the drill unfold. The firefighters were risking their lives, putting themselves in harm's way to save someone they had never met. It was an act of bravery that Clark found both inspiring and perplexing. Why would they do this? What drove them to such selfless acts? As the drill reached its climax, the firefighters emerged from the building, the victim safely in tow. They were covered in soot, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, but there was a look of triumph in their eyes that spoke volumes. As they gathered around to debrief, Clark found himself drawn to one of the firefighters, a young woman with a steely determination in her gaze. She was clearly a leader, her team looking to her for guidance and support. Clark approached her, his curiosity piqued. "Why do you do this?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why risk your life for others?" The firefighter looked at him, her expression softening. "Because it's the right thing to do," she replied simply. "Because we have the power to make a difference, to save lives. And if we don't do it, who will?" Clark was taken aback by the sincerity of her words. There was no bravado, no arrogance, just a quiet conviction that left him questioning everything he had been taught about humanity. These humans were far more complex than he had ever imagined. They were capable of incredible bravery, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They were willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of others, for the greater good. As the days passed, Clark's perspective on humanity continued to evolve. He began to see them not as a primitive, warlike species, but as beings capable of great compassion and selflessness. He saw how they rallied together in times of crisis, how they supported one another, how they strove to create a better world for future generations. It was a side of humanity that he had never considered, one that challenged his preconceived notions and forced him to confront his own biases. One day, as they walked through a park, Clark turned to Sarah. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "I came here with preconceptions, with fear in my heart. But now I see that humanity is more than just its past. You are capable of so much good." Sarah smiled, a warm, understanding smile. "We all have our flaws, Clark, but it's how we overcome them that defines us." Clark nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that his time on Earth had changed him in ways he couldn't fully understand yet, but he also knew that he was better for it. The humans he had met had shown him the best of what their species had to offer, and in doing so, they had helped him see the potential for greatness in all beings, regardless of their origins. As Clark's time on Earth drew to a close, he found himself filled with a mix of emotions. He had come to respect and even admire the humans he had met, but he also felt a deep sadness at the thought of leaving. On his last day, Sarah took him to a quiet spot overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, and Clark stood in silence, taking in the beauty of the moment. The city that had once seemed so chaotic and overwhelming now felt familiar, almost comforting. "Thank you, Sarah," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "For everything." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You'll always have a place here, Clark. Remember that." Clark smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "I will. And I hope that one day our peoples can come together, not just as allies, but as friends." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Clark felt a sense of closure. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he also knew that he was leaving Earth with a new sense of purpose. He would return to Zelthar Prime not as a skeptic, but as a bridge between their two worlds. The thought filled him with a sense of hope, a belief that the future held great promise for both humanity and the Zelthar. Clark's return to Zelthar Prime was met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. His fellow students and teachers were eager to hear about his experiences, but many were still wary of the humans. The stories of human violence and aggression had been deeply ingrained in Zelthar society, and it would take more than words to change their minds. Clark took his time, carefully recounting his journey, sharing not just the facts, but the emotions and insights he had gained. He spoke of humanity's potential for both greatness and destruction, and of their capacity for love, courage, and sacrifice. As he spoke, Clark could see the shift in his audience. The fear and mistrust that had once clouded their perception of humanity began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of understanding. By the time he finished, the room was silent, filled with the weight of his words. Clark looked out at the faces of his peers, knowing that he had done what he had set out to do. He had bridged the gap between their two worlds, if only just a little. In the days that followed, Clark became a vocal advocate for continued interaction between the Zelthar and humanity. His words carried weight, not just because of his experiences, but because of the sincerity with which he spoke. And slowly the walls between their species began to crumble. Joint projects were initiated, cultural exchange programs expanded, and for the first time in history, Zelthar and humans began to work together as equals, not as adversaries. As Kalark stood before the council, ready to embark on his next journey, he felt a sense of fulfillment. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he also knew that he was not alone. He had Sarah, he had humanity, and most importantly, he had hope. And with that hope, he knew that anything was possible. Years passed, and the relationship between the Zelthar and humanity continued to evolve. The initial skepticism and mistrust gradually gave way to mutual respect and collaboration. The two species found common ground in their desire for knowledge, their commitment to peace, and their shared vision of a brighter future. Kalark played a key role in this transformation, serving as a liaison between the Zelthar and humans, helping to foster understanding and cooperation. The journey was not without its challenges. There were moments of tension, times when old prejudices threatened to resurface. But each time, Kalark's unwavering belief in the potential for unity helped to guide them through. He became a respected figure not just among the Zelthar, but also within the human community. His experiences on Earth had shaped him into a leader, someone who could see beyond the differences and focus on the commonalities that bound them together. One of the most significant milestones in their relationship came when the Zelthar and humans embarked on a joint exploration mission to a distant star system. The mission was a symbol of their growing alliance, a testament to what they could achieve when they worked together. Kalark was chosen to lead the mission, a role he accepted with a deep sense of responsibility. The mission was a success, and it paved the way for further collaboration. The Zelthar and humans began to share technology, knowledge, and resources, each learning from the other. The exchange of ideas led to breakthroughs in science, medicine, and engineering, advancements that benefited both species. The partnership flourished, and it wasn't long before other species in the galaxy took notice. Kalark's journey, which had begun with uncertainty and fear, had now come full circle. He had helped to change the course of history, to build a bridge between two worlds that had once seemed so different. And in doing so, he had found his own place in the universe, a place where he could continue to make a difference. As Kalark looked back on his experiences, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had learned so much from the humans, and they had learned from him. Together, they had overcome obstacles, faced challenges, and achieved great things. And as he stood on the observation deck of the Zelthar ship gazing out at the stars, he knew that their journey was far from over. There were still many worlds to explore, many challenges to face, but Kalark was ready for whatever lay ahead. He had the support of his people, the friendship of the humans, and the knowledge that they could accomplish anything together. And so, with a sense of purpose and determination, Kalark set his sights on the future, knowing that the story of the Zelthar and humanity was just beginning. Kalark's journey had been one of transformation, not only for himself but also for the relationship between the Zelthar and humanity. His return to Zelthar Prime had marked the beginning of a new era, one where the two species could begin to truly understand and appreciate each other. But even as progress was made, there were still challenges to overcome. As Kalark settled back into life on Zelthar Prime, he found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned on Earth. He realized that while his people valued peace and harmony, they had also become somewhat insular, unwilling to engage with other species out of fear of conflict. The humans, on the other hand, were willing to take risks, to push the boundaries, even if it meant facing danger. This willingness to embrace the unknown was something that Kalark admired, and he knew that it was a quality that the Zelthar needed to cultivate if they were to thrive in a galaxy filled with diverse and often unpredictable species. Kalark began to advocate for a more open and proactive approach to interspecies relations. He argued that the Zelthar could learn much from other civilizations, not just in terms of technology and knowledge, but also in understanding different perspectives and ways of life. He proposed the creation of an interspecies council, where representatives from various species could come together to discuss common goals, resolve conflicts, and share their wisdom. This idea was met with resistance at first, especially from the more conservative members of Zelthar society, but Kalark's passion and conviction eventually won them over. The council was established, and Kalark was chosen to represent the Zelthar. His experiences on Earth had made him uniquely qualified for the role, and he took on the responsibility with a deep sense of purpose. The first few meetings of the council were tense, as representatives from different species struggled to find common ground. Old rivalries and prejudices threatened to derail the discussions, but Kalark remained steadfast. He used the lessons he had learned from his time on Earth to guide the conversations, encouraging the members to focus on their shared goals rather than their differences. Over time, the council began to make progress. They negotiated trade agreements, collaborated on scientific research, and worked together to address common threats. The council became a symbol of unity in the galaxy, a place where species could come together to solve problems and build a better future. Kalark's leadership was instrumental in the council's success, and he became a respected figure among the members. But even as the council flourished, Kalark could not forget the warnings he had received from the humans about the dangers that still lurked in the galaxy. The Zelthar had always prided themselves on their ability to avoid conflict, but Kalark knew that there were times when they would need to stand up and defend what they believed in. He began to advocate for the creation of a defensive force, one that could protect the Zelthar and their allies from external threats. This idea was met with even more resistance than the Interspecies Council, as many Zelthar were uncomfortable with the idea of militarization. Kalark understood their concerns, but he also knew that the galaxy was a dangerous place, and that the Zelthar could not afford to be complacent. He worked tirelessly to convince his people that a defensive force was not about seeking out conflict, but about being prepared to protect their way of life. Slowly, he began to gain support, and the Zelthar Defense Corps was established. The Corps was designed to be a force for peace, trained not only in combat, but also in diplomacy and conflict resolution. Kalark played a key role in the formation of the Corps, drawing on his experiences with the humans to help shape its philosophy and structure. He believed that the Zelthar could learn much from humanity's resilience and determination, and he sought to instill those qualities in the members of the Corps. The training was rigorous, but it also emphasized the importance of compassion, understanding, and the pursuit of peace. As the Corps grew in strength and capability, it became a symbol of the Zelthar's commitment to protecting their people and their allies. The Corps participated in joint training exercises with human forces, further strengthening the bond between the two species. These exercises were not just about preparing for war, they were also opportunities for cultural exchange, where Zelthar and human soldiers could learn from each other and build trust. Kalark took great pride in the Corps' achievements, but he also knew that their true test would come when they faced a real threat. That test came sooner than expected. A powerful and aggressive species known as the Varrock began to expand their territory, conquering and subjugating weaker species in their path. The Varrock were ruthless and efficient, using advanced technology and overwhelming force to crush any resistance. The Interspecies Council was called upon to respond, and Kalark knew that the Zelthar Defense Corps would play a crucial role in the coming conflict. The council debated their response, with some members advocating for a diplomatic approach, while others called for immediate military action. Kalark, drawing on his experiences on Earth, argued for a balanced approach. He believed that diplomacy should always be the first option, but that they must also be prepared to defend themselves if diplomacy failed. The council agreed, and Kalark was tasked with leading a delegation to negotiate with the Varrock. The negotiations were tense and fraught with danger. The Varrock were not interested in peace. They saw the council as weak and believed that they could easily conquer the coalition of species that had come together under its banner. Kalark and his team faced intimidation, threats, and even assassination attempts, but they remained resolute. Kalark used every tool at his disposal, from logical arguments to appeals to the Varrock's sense of self-preservation, to try to prevent a war. In the end, the Varrock refused to back down, and the Council had no choice but to prepare for conflict. The Zelthar Defense Corps, alongside forces from other member species, was mobilized to defend their territories. Kalark was given command of the coalition forces, a role he accepted with a heavy heart. He knew that war would bring suffering and loss, but he also knew that they had to stand up to the Varrock to protect their way of life. The war was brutal and costly, but the coalition forces fought with courage and determination. The Zelthar Defense Corps, with their unique blend of combat prowess and diplomatic skills, played a key role in turning the tide of the conflict. Kalark's leadership was instrumental, as he guided his forces with a steady hand, always seeking to minimize casualties and find opportunities for peace. Despite the ferocity of the Varrock, the coalition's resolve never wavered. They fought not just for survival, but for the principles of unity and cooperation that the Council represented. The war dragged on for years, with victories and setbacks on both sides, but in the end, the coalition emerged victorious. The Varrock were defeated, their expansion halted, and their power broken. The cost of the war was high, with countless lives lost and entire worlds devastated, but the coalition's victory was a testament to the strength of their unity. The Zelthar Defense Corps had proven their worth, and Kalark's leadership had solidified his place as one of the most respected figures in the galaxy. As the galaxy began the long process of rebuilding, Kalark found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had gone from being a skeptical student, fearful of humanity, to a leader who had helped to forge a new era of cooperation and understanding between species. He had seen the best and worst of what the galaxy had to offer, and through it all he had remained true to his belief in the potential for unity.